How Juventus came back from the Calciopoli scandal. The year is 2021. Juventus is on a 9-year title streak, looking for number 10, financially strapped and home to a certain Cristiano Ronaldo. No, this isn't an Inter fan's worst nightmare, but actually how the football landscape looks today. But things didn't look so promising for Turin's biggest club once upon a time. Going back just 10 years, very few would have expected the disgraced Italian giants to not only bounce back, but to bounce back so hard. The first phase of the revival, and probably the most important, was stability. If a club is in stable condition, it can simultaneously plan for the near future and the long term, and not get caught in the feedback loop of short-term thinking that clubs like Arsenal and even Barcelona find themselves in today. To achieve stability, you need your finances in order. According to the Deloitte Money League, in 2009, Juventus had an estimated revenue of just over 200 million euros. Fast forward to the 2020 edition, and Juventus have more than doubled that amount to roughly 460 million. Likewise with total valuation, in 2009 Juve were worth 450 million euros and today they're worth an incredible 1.5 billion. That may not seem like a lot if you compare Juventus to clubs like Barcelona or Bayern Munich, but it's important to keep in mind that Juventus were relegated quite recently. The club hasn't just gotten stable, they've become sustainable. Of course, complex factors like inflation exist, but I think it's quite fair to say that Juventus have done a lot right in these last 10 or so years. But what exactly? For one, Juventus went ahead and became the first Italian club to build and own their own stadium, completing the construction just before the 2011-12 season started. By building their own stadium, which is now known as the Allianz Stadium, Juventus became part of the first wave of clubs that began modernizing themselves in the 2010s. This new stadium had a larger capacity than the Stadio Olimpico that Juve had shared with Torino for most of their history, and allowed the club to nearly triple their annual matchday revenue in just their first year in their new home. At this point, Juventus generate over 6 times what they used to before they moved to the Allianz. The next factor in achieving stability for Juventus was an approach to spending that I wouldn't consider frugal or cheap, but rather measured. For example, if you take a look at Juve's main starting lineup for the 2013-14 season when the club won the league with over 100 points, you see quite a few big names like Tevez, Pogba and Buffon. Interestingly though, this team was assembled for just under 130 million euros. That number becomes even more impressive once you consider that Buffon alone accounts for 53 million euros of that total. Since Juventus have come back from relegation, they've not only found ways to maximize and increase their revenue, but they've been very careful with how they manage the resources that they do have. Juventus are currently enjoying the most successful period in their entire history, and to be quite honest, they don't look like stopping anytime soon. The club has won a historic 9 league titles in a row and managed to win 4 consecutive Coppa Italia titles between 2015 and 2018. Juventus have also reached 2 Champions League finals in the last 5 years, and now that they have Ronaldo, they'll be hoping to win their first Champions League trophy in nearly 25 years. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here. We're talking about what Juventus has actually achieved and, more importantly, how. In football, we typically attribute success to a few key players and throw in an honorable mention for the manager if anyone is still paying attention, but in the case of Juventus, I'll try to make sure everyone gets the credit they deserve. Starting with the appointment of Antonio Conte in 2011, the club has consistently hired the right man for the job. In the 5 years between relegation and the league title win in 2012, Juventus had 6 different full-time managers, but in the 9 years since, they've only changed managers 3 times. Besides hiring the right man for the job, what changed in Juve's approach? Disregarding Andrea Pirlo, who's in his first professional job, what do their last 3 managers, Conte, Allegri, and Sarri, have in common? All were signed with a view to implementing their own unique playstyle that would take the club to the next level, but what Juventus started doing differently that they weren't doing before is they started to make signings that not only complemented the manager, but signings that could potentially fit into the plans of prospective managers. The club has transitioned from 3-5-2 under Conte to 3-4-2-1, and then more of a 4-3-3 under Allegri to more of a mix between 4-3-3 and 4-3-1-2 under Sarri. If you pay attention, you'll see a pattern and, more importantly, an evolution. Asamoah has been replaced by Alexandro, Pirlo by Pjanic, and Tevez by Dybala, and so on. Although these signings might seem like typical like-for-like replacements, they represent a gradual shift towards a more fluid, dominant, and entertaining style of football. Take De Ligt, for example. Although he's a centre-back, he's part of the new generation or mold of centre-backs that are comfortable with the ball at their feet and offer more than just defensive security. Of course, he's still got some parts of his game to improve, but you know exactly where he fits in the club's long-term plans, and you could see him becoming even better with an accommodating club environment like Juve's. The last phase of Juventus's rebirth is Supremacy, or rather the search for supremacy. The club is now at a point in its recent evolution where it is now looking to become not only the best team in the world, but the biggest too. Juventus haven't quite yet achieved this yet, but they've been relentless in their pursuit to get into that sort of position. The gradual evolution of their hiring policy showcases this exactly. When Antonio Conte was appointed as Juventus manager, his CV wasn't exactly the most impressive. He had spent most of his time outside Serie A, and his biggest achievement was winning Serie B with Bari. Now, of course, we now know that he's a great coach and one of the most important figures in Juventus's recent history, but at the time he was quite a gamble. Compare his credentials at the time of appointment to those of Allegri. Unlike Conte, Allegri was quite experienced and successful at the top level and even had some notable achievements in Europe. Likewise, if you compare Sarri to Conte and Allegri, you'll see that when he was appointed, he not only had plenty of experience working at a very high level, but he already had a European trophy to his name. As the years have passed and Juventus have progressed through each of the phases of their revival, they've been able to attract a higher caliber of manager with each successive appointment. I wouldn't be surprised if someone like Pep Guardiola was in charge of the club within the next 5 years. The same goes for the players. Signings in the past few years like Higuain, Dybala, and Ronaldo haven't just strengthened the team on the field, but they've raised the club's profile off the field. Because the club has been run so well financially for the last decade or so, they've been able to make a few additions that offer more to the team than just their ability. Ronaldo is obviously the prime example of this. In addition to showing the financial might of the club, Ronaldo was signed with the purpose of leading the club to a much-desired Champions League trophy to raise the club's prestige and to get people's eyes on Juventus. Although they haven't won that Champions League yet, Ronaldo's arrival has definitely made Juventus grow as a brand. The club has done other things to raise their profile and reinvent their image too, like changing their famous club crest from the classic black and white striped oval to a more modern minimalist black J, or even briefly ditching their typical black and white striped kit in favor of a more stylish casual design. If you include other ventures like the J Hotel and the club's ever-growing presence and continued success, then it seems only inevitable that Juventus win that long-awaited Champions League and join that group of super elite clubs. To sum up just how eventful the last 15 years have been for Juventus, the club was caught fixing matches, relegated, promoted, have won the league 9 times in a row, reached 2 Champions League finals, and are now one of the finest destinations in Europe. The resurgence has come down to a belief and a vision that has proven to be much greater than their downfall ever was. Football works downward, so if you have a good director of football, a good chairman, good owners, the more likely you are to identify the right manager for the job and the right players for the manager. Many people at different times in these last couple of years deserve their share of the credit, but I think a lot of praise should go towards the club's executive management and especially to individuals like Andrea Agnelli, Giuseppe Marotta, and Fabio Paratisi. I also have a great deal of respect for players like Del Piero and Buffon that remained with the club despite potentially missing out on years of top-level football. But let me put the question towards you. Who do you think deserves the most credit for Juventus' recent success? Make sure you leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Also, please go follow me on Instagram at NuSquared2. I post unique content there, and I probably post a bit more regularly than on YouTube. But yeah, thank you very much for watching to the very end, and I will be uploading soon.